Russell John Mort was born September 4, 1979. On May 5, 1982, he was busy playing in the sandbox of his family's residence in Wheatfield, New York. Around 12:20 p.m., his mother went inside to repair one of his toys. She came back less than 5 minutes later, and there was no sign of Russell. The gate in the fence was closed, and it was locked from the outside. The fence was 4 feet high, but there was one part that was lower than the rest. Russell climbed over that part just the day before, so it is possible that he climbed over again. An unidentified white male and female are wanted for questioning regarding Russell's disappearance. The couple was spotted in the area of the Russell family's home at the same time he vanished. No one saw the couple interact with Russell, and it is not known if they are connected to this case, but investigators would like to question them as possible witnesses if nothing more. The female had dark brown curly hair and was in her early to mid-20s in 1982. The male had light brown hair and a mustache. He was in his late 20s to early 30s in 1982. The couple was seen riding in a white 1965 or older Corvette with a black convertible top. Others believe that Russell wasn't abducted. They believe it is more likely that he fell into the Niagara Falls, which runs about 100 yards from his home. In 2005, a man from Texas came forward believing he might be Russell. DNA tests were done and his DNA did not match. Jean Spangler was born September 2, 1923. She was an American dancer, model and actress who appeared in several Hollywood films in the late 1940s. In 1942 she married Dexter Banner, and in 1944 they had a daughter, Christine. The two of them divorced in 1946, however. What ensued was a long battle for custody. In 1948 custody was awarded to Jean. She moved in with her mother. October 7, 1949, Jean left the house around 5 p.m. She left her daughter with a sister-in-law and told her family she was going to meet Dexter to discuss a late child support payment. Jean never made it back home, however. The last sighting of her was in a grocery store at 6 p.m. She appeared to be waiting for someone. The main suspect was Jean's ex-husband, Dexter. He claimed, however, he hasn't seen her in weeks, and his story checked out. 2 days after she went missing, a purse was found in Griffith Park, about 5.5 miles from her home. The straps on one side were torn loose. This indicated someone ripped it off her arm. Inside the purse was a note which read, "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away." No one knew who Kirk is or Dr. Scott. It is believed that she was romantically involved with Kirk, and Dr. Scott might have been a doctor that could have helped her with an abortion, since some of her friends told police that she was 3 months pregnant. There have been a few reported sightings of her, but nothing that could ever be confirmed. Mark Himebaugh was an 11-year-old boy living in Delhaven, New Jersey. His nickname was Curious George. Mark had red hair, blue eyes and freckles. He struggled with OCD and was on medication to help him. He also had frequent tantrums and angry outbursts. On November 25th, Mark's mother let him go outside to watch how firefighters were putting out a fire about a quarter mile from their house. She left the house for a quick 5-minute errand. She was delayed, however, and only got back to their house 40 minutes later. Mark was still not back, but she assumed he was playing with some neighborhood kids. Only at 5 p.m. that day, when he still hadn't returned, he was reported missing. Around 9 p.m. that night, Mark's left shoe was found at Sunday Beach, and his footprints were found nearby. Witnesses saw Mark at a local park talking with an unknown girl about 9 years old. It is quite strange for such a small community not to identify the girl. Mark was also seen later with 2 men. One of them was between 30 to 35 years old with dark red hair in a ponytail. That was the last known sighting of Mark, and to this day he still hasn't been found. Michael William Negrete was born on March 25, 1981. He was an 18-year-old student at the University of California, Los Angeles. Michael was a popular freshman at UCLA on a music scholarship. He lived in Dykstra Hall. On December 10, he attended a party that was held on his floor with his friends. After that, he went to play video games in another room until 4 a.m. with a friend. After 4 a.m. he went to his room, never to be seen again. At 9 a.m. his roommate woke up and saw there was no sign of Michael, even though clothing, shoes, wallet, keys, and musical instruments were all there. The police could not find any indication that Michael had any enemies, a secret life, depression, drugs, or alcohol issues. The police soon received a lead. Several students claimed they saw a Caucasian man on their floor during the party that none of them knew. They released a sketch of this man and asked him to come forward, but he never did. More than 500 leads were submitted to the police, but unfortunately none of them ever led anywhere. Michael's parents hired 2 private investigators and offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to Michael's whereabouts. Brittanee Drexel was born in Rochester, New York in 1991. She aspired to be a nurse or a model. In April of 2009, she asked her mother if she, along with her boyfriend and a few other friends, could go to Myrtle Beach, California for spring break. Her mother refused, however, since she felt something bad was going to happen. On April 22nd, Brittanee left anyways, without telling her mother. She and her friend stayed at the Bar Harbor Hotel. 3 days after they arrived in Myrtle Beach, at 8 p.m., Brittanee left her friends to walk 1.5 miles to another hotel called the Blue Water Resort. There she visited one of her longtime friends. She could be seen on security cameras. At around 8:45 p.m., she left the hotel. All the while she was texting her boyfriend, John Greco. At 9:15, her messages suddenly stopped. Her boyfriend tried to call her a few times, but it went straight to voicemail. None of her friends knew where she was. John then called Brittanee's mother, and the search started. The police saw the security footage of a Blue Water Resort. They also questioned Peter Brozowitz, who was her friend that she came to visit at the hotel. Brittanee's mother believes that her daughter was trafficked, but the police does not believe it is likely. It is still unknown what happened to Brittanee Drexel. Ruochen Liao was a 28-year-old California man originally from China. He worked at a car dealership in Santa Ana and went by the name Tony. Tony met up with 2 men for a deal. He didn't fully trust them after their first meeting. For the second meeting, Tony took his friend with him, for in case something happened. Tony was instructed to go alone for the third meeting, but he still told his friend to observe from a distance. On July 16, 2019 was the third meeting. Tony's friend saw him get into a dark-colored minivan, and the driver sped off. When his friend still hasn't heard from him the next day, Tony was reported missing to the police. Tony's family received a ransom note asking for $2 million. The police believe the 2 men that kidnapped Tony is Guang Yao Yang and Pei Cheng Shen, but haven't been able to prove it yet. Even if they are involved, it is not known at all where Tony is. The FBI is offering a reward for any information on Tony's whereabouts. Carla Vicentini was born in a small town in Brazil on the 29th of April, 1983. In January of 2006, she left Brazil to go to America. She saved all of her money so that she could go stay in the United States for 5 months on a cultural exchange program. Once in New Jersey, Carla studied engineering and worked at a White Castle restaurant. She was unhappy with a small motel room that she had to share with several other women also in the program. Carla then decided to leave her job and move out of the motel room. She went to live with one of her family's friends and started working at a Mediterranean manor. On February 8, 2006, she went to the Adega Bar and Grill in Newark, New Jersey. She went there to visit a friend who worked there. At around 2 a.m., she left the bar with a man in his 30s. Some witnesses believe his name is Antonio. Carla told her friend that she was going with the man to his car to look at a photo before she left. The man is described as 5'8", 200 pounds, blue eyes, salt and pepper hair, and Caucasian. What happened after she left the bar is not known. It is believed that she did make it back to her home, since her wallet, passport, and jacket was found there. She hasn't been seen since, and this unknown man is a person of interest in her disappearance. A couple of days after Carla went missing, someone called her boss's cell phone and screamed for help. The caller has never been identified, and it's not known if the call was related to her case or not. Her mother does not believe she is alive anymore, since she never let more than a couple of days go by without talking to her family. Carla was last seen wearing a blue Hugo Boss coat, white sleeveless shirt, blue jeans, and high-heeled brown ankle boots. She has a tattoo of a tiger on her stomach and a tattoo of an angel on her back. Brian Shaffer was born in 1979. He was a medical student at Ohio State University, studying microbiology. On March 31, 2006, Brian and his father Randy celebrated his class's ending for spring break by going out to eat steak. Randy noted that Brian seemed very exhausted by all the studying he had done. Brian told his father that he was going to go out to drink with a friend later that night. Randy remembered having his reservations, but he did not express them to his son. He met up with his friend William Clint Florence at a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloon. Brian and Florence then went bar hopping. According to Florence, he and Brian would do a shot of hard liquor at every bar they were. Then after midnight, the two of them, along with some other friends, went back to the Ugly Tuna Saloon. While there, they somehow got separated. At around 2 a.m., his friends left the bar, assuming Brian already went home, without letting them know. On Monday morning, he missed his flight to Miami. Brian was then reported as missing to the Columbus police. The police started the investigation at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, where Brian had last been seen. The bar had cameras set up and showed the footage to the police. They saw Brian and his friends entering the bar, but never saw him leaving again. The police said it is possible, however, that he changed clothes or a hat and kept his head down while leaving. Strangely enough, his friend Florence refused to take a lie detector test. The police also for a time thought that Brian might be a victim of the smiley face killer, but they soon abandoned this theory. To this day, the police still receive leads on this case, and they are positive that they'll find Brian Shaffer. Crystal Ann Tymich was born on 23rd September 1987. She lived in the Hyde Park area of South Central Los Angeles. On June 30th, 1994, 6-year-old Crystal was busy picking peaches from a neighbor's house with her brothers. This happened between 2 and 5 p.m. Eventually, her brothers went inside their home, leaving Crystal outside by herself. A couple minutes later, they returned to tell her to come inside, but there was no sign of Crystal. The LAPD was called, but they couldn't find Crystal either. None of the neighbors noticed anything unusual in the area at the time she vanished. In 2005, police searched the crawl space of a house across the street from where she lived. They found bones, but it later turned out to be animal bones. Crystal's case still remains unsolved to this day. Her family still lives in the same house, hoping to find out what happened to their daughter. This is a picture of what she might possibly look like today. She was last seen wearing a pink t-shirt, floral printed shorts, and white sneakers with images of the cartoon character, the Little Mermaid. Very little is known about this case. Jonathan Fraser was born on the 11th of May 1995 in Honolulu, Hawaii. He was last seen on July 30th, 2016 at his apartment at 9:30 a.m. 9 days later, on August 8, his grey two-door 1994 Honda hatchback with the Hawaii license plate number SXC021 was found near the intersection of Summer Street and Kulihui Road. This is what his car looks like. His family does not believe he would have left of his own accord, and foul play is suspected. Jonathan suffers from an unspecified medical condition that requires medication daily. He has brown hair and hazel eyes. There are 4 scars on his face, 2 on his chin, 1 under his left eye, and 1 under his nose. The FBI has offered a $20,000 reward for any information leading to Jonathan's whereabouts. An interesting thing to note is that Jonathan was in a very bad car crash just a few months before his disappearance. He and his best friend, Caleb John Misk Lee, crashed head-on into another vehicle in November 2015. Caleb was hospitalized but eventually succumbed to his injuries. The first responders' records show that Caleb was driving and that Jonathan was the front seat passenger. Caleb's father, Michael Misk, filed a lawsuit against Jonathan, however, claiming that he had been the driver. It is unknown if any of this is connected to the disappearance of Jonathan Fraser. Morgan Chantal Nick was born September 12, 1988 in Arkansas. On June 9, 1995, Morgan and her mother Colleen attended a Little League baseball game. Morgan asked her mother if she could go catch lightning bugs with her friends. It was 10:30 p.m. and already dark, so Colleen was hesitant, but eventually let her go. 15 minutes later, her friends returned, but Morgan was not with them. Colleen asked where her daughter was. Morgan's friends told her that Morgan was busy emptying sand out of her shoes near Colleen's car. When Colleen made her way over to her car, there was no sign of Morgan. Colleen kept looking for Morgan and told the match official about her not being able to find her. It was then that some of Morgan's friends claimed that I saw a creepy man talking to Morgan as she was putting her shoes back on. Morgan Nick has never been seen or heard from again after that night. This is a sketch of the man that was talking to Morgan. In 1996, Colleen Nick started the Morgan Nick Foundation, which helps parents cope with the disappearances of children and helps prevent children from going missing. The Amber Alert service is named the Morgan Nick Amber Alert in the state of Arkansas. In August 2012, Tonya Smith and James Monhart, 2 previously convicted felons, were arrested for computer fraud after attempting to assume the identity of Morgan Nick. There have been a few anonymous tips throughout the years, but it had led to nothing. The case of Morgan Nick is still unsolved. Barbara Bolick was a 55-year-old woman who loved hiking. She and her husband used to go hike together until her husband had suffered a heart attack, so he no longer hiked. Barbara then decided to hike with some of her friends. On July 18, 2007, she and a family friend called Jim Ramiker went hiking in the Bitterroot Mountains. At one point during the hike, Jim claimed he was looking at a view for a few seconds. When he looked back to Barbara, she was nowhere to be seen. Jim says she was around 20 to 30 feet behind him. He also claims that Barbara and himself spoke to two young men earlier on their hiking trip, but those two men have never come forward. One of them is dark-skinned with dark hair, and the other had a medium complexion and reddish hair. This is what a dark-haired male possibly looks like. They may have been driving a light-colored, older model Chevrolet SUV with Montana license plates. The two men seemed to be in their early 20s, and they were accompanied by a black mixed-breed dog with white markings. The police want to speak to these two men, not because they are suspects, but because they may have valuable information. Obviously, Jim was the main suspect. If it was him, he surely could have come up with a better story than Barbara just disappearing into thin air. She could have fallen and Jim simply didn't hear it. But wouldn't she have been found by now? Some say Barbara left on her own accord, but that is unlikely. If she wanted to run away, why bring someone along in the first place? Far more likely is that someone might have taken her. Perhaps those two young men that never came forward. "12-year-old Garrett Bardsley and his father, Kevin Bardsley, was on a wilderness trip with Garrett's Boy Scout troop at the Winter Mountains in Summit County, Utah. On the morning of August 20, 2004, the two of them got up early to go fishing. Garrett got too close to the lake, and his shoes and socks got soaked. Garrett decided to walk back to their tent to change his shoes. Kevin kept his eyes on his son and reminded him which directions to take. After 20 minutes, Kevin got worried because his son hadn't returned. When he went to check up on him, Garrett was nowhere to be seen. The only evidence that was ever found was an ankle sock about half a mile from the spot where he disappeared. Garrett's mother claims it is her son's sock, but one of the people that searched for Garrett claimed it was his own. The local police believes that he got lost and passed away due to exposure. Kevin Bardsley has stated that he will never give up hope of finding his son. The area where Garrett disappeared has very rough terrain. The day he vanished, the temperature was near freezing and it rained and hailed. Garrett has light brown hair and hazel eyes. He has a small gap between his two upper front teeth. He was last seen wearing a black hooded Quicksilver pullover, sweatpants, a white t-shirt, ankle socks, and white Converse sneakers. Patti Krieger went hiking with her dog, whose name is Bear, on Sauk Mountain near Rockport, Washington. They were accompanied by a boyfriend, Larry Lee Presley, and a few of his relatives. According to Larry and his relatives, they were on the mountain to spread the ashes of Larry's parents, who passed away a few months earlier. They say Patti and Bear took a different trail. They assumed the trails would link up. Patti and Bear failed to show up at the bottom. Instead of waiting, Larry and his family went to go buy food at a grocery store. 4 hours later they returned to the mountain and only then reported Patti missing. For some reason, Larry told the police they were Patti's family. This meant that Patti's real family did not get notified of her disappearance immediately. The next day, when she didn't show up for work, her boss notified her son Alan. Alan tried his best to enter his mother's house, but Larry wouldn't let him inside. It was noteworthy that Larry, who was a felon, had Patti's keys and driver license, and one of his friends had Patti's phone. Larry trashed all her belongings inside the house and drove her cars all around town instead of his own car. He and his family was also not cooperating. Less than a month before her disappearance, she told a co-worker she was scared Larry was going to do something to her. Patti's family still searches for her every day in the mountains. They are convinced that Larry had something to do with her disappearance. Richey Edwards was born 22nd December of 1967 in Wales. He joined the band Manic Street Preachers. Richey was initially their driver, before he was accepted as a fourth member. On 15 May 1991, a journalist asked Richey about the band's authenticity and values. Richey responded by carving the words "for real" into his arm with a razor blade. He suffered from severe depression and was open about himself harming. 2 weeks before he disappeared, he started to slowly withdraw all of the money he had in his bank account. The night before he disappeared, he gave a book to one of his friends called Novel with Cocaine. He told his friend to read the introduction. The intro of the book details the life of someone who vanished. And that is exactly what Richey did on the 1st of Feb of 1995. He vanished. All of the signs point to him leaving on his own accord, but it's not impossible that he could have decided to end his own life. Jean Johnson was a 70-year-old widow from New Mexico. Her husband had passed away 8 years earlier in 2011. She still had her daughter, Heidi Johnson. On Sunday, May 26, 2019, Jean sent Heidi a picture of the dog she was watching for one of her friends. On Monday evening, Heidi tried calling Jean, but she didn't pick up. She tried again on Tuesday, but had the same result, which worried her since the two of them usually talked at least 3 times a day. It turns out she had reason for worry. The friend for who Jean had been dog sitting for called Heidi and told her that Jean did not drop off the dog on Monday like they arranged. Heidi went to her mother's house. The front door was slightly open. The dog was still inside and had a few accidents, indicating he hasn't been let out for quite some time. Jean was nowhere to be seen. Her only possession that was missing was her pistol. Heidi told police that Jean would only have had it with her if there was a mountain lion too close to her home or if someone scared her. Jean is described as 5'6" inches tall, weighing 130 pounds, with light brown hair and green eyes. Daniel Lynn Lagerlöf was born in 1969. He was a movie director and also directed a couple of TV series in Sweden. Daniel married his longtime girlfriend, McClain Lagerlöf, in 1997. They had 3 children together. McClain was a screenwriter, and she often wrote projects for her husband to direct. On October 6, 2011, Daniel was busy scouting a planned filming location in a Chirpinen nature reserve. He never made it back to his wife and 3 children. It is believed that Daniel was caught on slippery rocks by large waves sweeping the area and pulled out to sea near the steep cliffs. He was all alone, so there are no witnesses. To this day, there are still no signs of Daniel Lynn Lagerlöf. This case was one of the most infuriating to do research for. A lot of the sources has different dates for when she was last seen or when she was reported missing. There's also so many details just missing, but I wanted to cover this case since I feel it is very solvable and there is definitely not enough coverage of this case. 22-year-old Cheyann Klus was always a very upbeat and outgoing young woman from Chicago. Her social media accounts was filled with selfies and memes. On January 13, 2016, her mother, who she was very close with, unfortunately passed away. This was after a long battle with liver failure. Then shortly after that, Cheyann also lost her beloved dog. As you can imagine, this was a very hard time for her. On September 4, 2016, she posted on her Facebook, "Unfortunately just lost another part of her family, my puppy Meeker. I had the opportunity to have you as my best friend for 11 years of my life. Go get mom and keep her company up there. I love you." Cheyann became depressed, and you could see how much she was suffering on a Facebook post she made. she began hanging out with people that weren't good for her. One of these people were 31-year-old Gabe Sedekase. At one point, Cheyann and Gabe was arrested. She was charged with obstructing identification and illegal transport of alcohol, while Gabe was charged with possession of a controlled substance. On the night of November 27th, Cheyann left her home with a laptop and a few pieces of clothing. She then went to the house of 38-year-old Brian Biddle. This is 4 photos that was posted by Brian on Cheyann's Facebook that day. The two of them spent most of their time partying and drinking together. Early morning on the 29th of November 2017, a friend of Cheyann named Chad Chanapai received a few texts and calls from Cheyann. He woke up 20 minutes after her last message. Chad saw that Cheyann desperately wanted a lift from him, and it seemed like she wanted to get out of Brian's house. Chad tried calling her, but there was no answer. He then called Brian, who told him that he slept for 18 hours after all the drinking, and when he woke up, Cheyann was gone. The day of when she was actually reported missing also does not seem to be known. I saw some people say on the 1st of December, on the 11th of December, and also the 12th of December. It is known that it is her father had reported her missing. On December 11th, 2017, a 911 call was made from Cheyann's phone. The person who called immediately hung up. It is unknown if it was Cheyann who called or someone else. If she was reported missing on the 11th of December by her father, like some sources say, then it would also be quite a coincidence that a 911 call and her being reported missing happened on the same day. It is possible that Cheyann saw that she was reported missing and tried to call 911, or that whoever caused Cheyann to disappear called 911 to try and take the investigation into the wrong direction. Police were able to trace her call to Mallard Lake Forest Preserve, about 20 miles from Brian's house. The police searched the area extensively. Something I saw a lot of people say was that they didn't search any of the lakes or the ponds. I definitely think they should check it. They found a couple of items, but nothing that could be linked to Cheyann's disappearance at all. The police has stated that Brian Biddle is not a suspect, and he has been cooperating with them. He let them search his phone, his home, his computer, and other personal devices. I can definitely see why people think Brian might be involved. He is a known drug addict, and after Cheyann disappeared, he was arrested for having a firearm and narcotics. He's also the last person to have seen her. A lot of people think that her friend Chad might be involved in her disappearance. It seems like he was friend-zoned and cared more for Cheyann than she did for him. In his interview with Crime Watch Daily, he made it clear how he disliked the fact that Cheyann was with other men like Brian and Gabe. It should also be noted that on the day the 911 call was made from Cheyann's phone, Chad put up this post on his Facebook account. Could also just be a coincidence that it was on the same day. Also in his Facebook, you'll see that pretty much all of his posts are about Cheyann, even before she disappeared. He would always call Cheyann babe or baby girl, which sounds to me at least like something a boyfriend would say, not just a friend. It could of course also be someone other than Brian or Chad. If she really wanted to get away from Brian's house, and Chad wasn't responding, she surely must have tried to reach someone else. She doesn't have a car or any money, so she must have gotten to the nature preserve with someone else most likely. Of course, because she was depressed from losing her mother and her dog, it is not impossible that she took her own life or ran away. I feel like this case can definitely still be solved. I'm also curious to hear what you guys think about this case, and what do you think happened to her? Cheyann had brown hair, brown eyes, a tattoo on her pinky finger, multiple tattoos on her right arm, including an Indian head on her upper arm at her shoulder, and a tattoo of a skull, a pink rose and a word in script lettering on the inside of her forearm. Jennifer Lynn Marcum was born 15 June 1977. She attended Lanphier High School in Springfield, Illinois. She enjoyed shopping, dancing, and sports. Jennifer worked as a dancer at a strip club in Colorado. She also had experience working in the fast food industry. Jennifer was last seen on February 17, 2003 at the Denver airport. It is unclear if she ever took the flight out of the airport. Her 1999 Saturn car was found in the parking lot. Police believes that her disappearance might have something to do with her boyfriend, Stephen Ennis. At the time, Stephen was incarcerated in a federal detention center. Stephen was awaiting trial on charges of running a distribution ring for the drug ecstasy. Jennifer was an important witness in the case. Her parents describe her as a devoted parent who would never willingly leave her child abandoned. She has brown hair, blue eyes. Her height is 5 feet 6 inches and she weighed about 115 pounds. Angela Mae Meeker was born on the 9th of July, 1965. On July 7, 1979, she went to the Tacoma Mall in Tacoma, Washington, to buy a birthday card for a friend. This was 2 days before her own 14th birthday. That night, she was seen at a party, but never returned home and hasn't been seen since. She has brown hair, hazel eyes, and a dark mole on the left side of her mouth. Her mom thought that Angela had ran away since she had a history of leaving home and also skipping school. She did not report Angela missing for 24 hours. The police also figured that Angela had ran away. It wasn't until 2 years after Angela went missing that she was formally listed as a missing person. You heard that right, 2 years. Her mother now believes she hitchhiked on the day of her disappearance and may have been attacked by whomever picked her up. Her case remains unsolved. This is a picture of what she might possibly look like today. She would be 54 years old. Mike McClain was a 29-year-old resident of Manchester, New Hampshire. On the night of April 21, 2019, he went to the Tropical Lounge nightclub in Nashua, New Hampshire with his friends. A female friend of Mike and another woman got into an altercation outside the club in the early morning hours. The police was even called. Mike was not a part of the initial altercation, but he did get involved to break it up. Thereafter, Mike got separated from his friends. This was around 1:45 a.m. For the next 45 minutes, his friends looked for him before going home. Sometime between 1:45 a.m. and 2 a.m., Michael called his boss saying that he was being followed and there were more than one. His boss tried to call him back, but he never answered. During this time, there were a few strange messages from his phone to his friends. It is unclear if he typed any of it, however. His phone was last pinged at a McDonald's on Hollis Street going east of where the Tropical Lounge was. The last known sighting of him was security cam footage of nearby condominium complex continuing east of McDonald's. There has been no activity on his social media or his credit cards. His mother was quoted as saying, "When you're a mom, your child is your whole world. And right now, my world is falling apart. But I gotta keep on for my daughter and for Mike. I'm holding on to my faith." Ilene Beth Micheloff was born on the 12th of March, 1975. She lived in Dublin, California. On January 30, 1989, at around 3 p.m. after school finished at Wells Intermediate School. She walked home. Ilene always took a shortcut home, going through a wide alley behind a shopping center. Ilene was carrying a dark blue backpack. The backpack was later found abandoned in the creek bed in John Nape Park. Ilene has never been seen again. Foul play is very much suspected, since her backpack was found at a place where the police already searched. The police initially believed Timothy Bintner was responsible for her disappearance. They also announced that he could possibly connect it to the disappearance of Michaela Garecht, Tara Cossey, and Amanda Campbell. The police first heard about Timothy after they started sending letters to young girls in the East Bay area. These letters or notes would be printed backwards, so it could only be deciphered when it is held up to a mirror. Timothy stated he only did this because the girls were lonely. He also visited the gravesite of Angela Bugay. She was a 5-year-old girl whose life was taken after she was abducted. As weird as this creep is, the police could never prove that he was involved in Ilene's disappearance. She was last seen wearing a charcoal grey pullover, a pink and charcoal grey skirt with horizontal stripes, black low-top sneakers, and 2 earrings in each ear. She was carrying a dark blue backpack and a black molded hard plastic flute case. Daniel Kiebelbach was born 27 August 1985 in Bavaria, West Germany. He was a pop singer and actor. His rise to fame started in 2002 when he placed third in a talent show called Deutschland sucht den Superstar. In 2004, Daniel was driving without a license and collided with a truck. He received €25,000 fine and had to do community service. Nevertheless, Daniel was very successful. He used the proceeds that he made from his album called Positive Energy and invested it all, making him millions. On 29th August 2018, he was traveling via cruise ship from Germany to New York. On the 9th of September, during the trip, he jumped into the water, never to be seen again. The Canadian Armed Forces was not able to find him. Daniel's ex-boyfriend told police that Daniel told him he wanted to run away and start a new life. Since it happened so recently, the police still have high hopes of finding Daniel. Jim Gray was born on January 12, 1944, in San Francisco, California. He worked as a software designer at companies such as IBM and Microsoft. Jim was also an experienced sailor and owned a 40-foot sailboat. On January 28, 2007, he went out for the day on his sailboat to scatter his mother's ashes. He never returned and hasn't been seen since. It was a clear day and no distress signal was received. The last part is strange because his boat has an automatic emergency position indicating radio beacon, which should have gone off if there was any trouble. They searched for him using planes, helicopters and boats. There was even an underwater search that was done with sophisticated technology. Unfortunately, to this day, the whereabouts of Jim Gray is still not known. The University of California, Berkeley, and Gray's family hosted a tribute on May 31, 2008. Microsoft's worldwide telescope software is dedicated to Gray. In 2008, Microsoft opened a research center in Madison, Wisconsin, named after Jim Gray. Michaela Joy Garecht was born on January 24, 1979. She lived in Hayward, California, with her parents Rod and Sharon. On the morning of November 19, 1988, Michaela and her friend Katrina left home at 10 a.m. They then rode their scooters to the Rainbow Market. The two of them wanted to get some food and sodas. When they left the store, they walked home and completely forgot about the scooters. Eventually they remembered and walked back to the store. They got there but noticed one of the scooters was missing. Michaela then saw it was lying in the parking lot near a parked car. As she bent over to pick it up, an unknown man picked her up and put her in his car. The only witness was Katrina, and she ran inside the store to get help. The female clerk called the police, but it was too late. 9-year-old Michaela was gone. The search for Michaela was really extensive. In the first year, the police received over 5,000 leads, and there was 42 missing person flyers printed. Despite all the leads and effort being put in to find her, Michaela's whereabouts is still unknown. Her case was the first missing child case to feature on America's Most Wanted in 1988. Michaela's case was also featured on Unsolved Mysteries in the same year. The discovery of J.C. Lee Dugard in 2009 brought hope to Michaela's parents that she would be found alive. Her mother Sharon maintains an active blog that is dedicated to Michaela and the search to find her. Each year on the anniversary of her abduction, members of the community would come together and put up ribbons on the tree next to where the car of her abductor was parked. In May 2019, the FBI posted a $10,000 reward for information regarding Michaela's disappearance. As of 2020, Michaela's case is still open. Amber Elizabeth Cates was born February 3, 1988 in Spring Hill, Tennessee. On April 11, 2004, she left her mother's house in Maury County, Tennessee with a friend named James Gordon in a gold Mazda. Amber was supposed to return home 2 days later, but when she didn't, she was reported missing. The police questioned James Gordon. He told them that he left her with another friend, Ronald California in Zuriega. James also said that the two of them were going to go get a meal at a Waffle House restaurant on James Campbell Boulevard. Police located Ronald in a federal prison in Alabama. Ronald told police that he dropped her off at a garage in Columbia, Tennessee after she purchased hair dye. He also claims that he has no idea what happened to Amber after he had dropped her off. Amber's older sister, Brenda James, claims that Amber was involved with bad people, but she was often drinking and partaking in illegal substances. Brenda became Amber's legal guardian just a few days before she was last seen. Brenda does not believe Amber is alive anymore, but if she is, that she would be in Georgia or Texas. At first it was believed that Amber simply ran away, but the fact that so many years have gone by made police believe that she met with foul play. No trace of Amber has been seen since. Her social security number has gone unused since 2004, and she hasn't used her cell phone either. This is an age progression of what she might look like now. She would now be 32 years old. Ray Grigor was born October 9, 1945, in Cleveland, Ohio. He received his law degree and began his career as a prosecutor. In 1969, he married Barbara Gray, who he met just after graduating from the University of Dayton. Then in 1978, the two of them adopted a baby girl named Laura. Then 2 years later, in 1980, he moved to Pennsylvania and worked as an assistant district attorney for a little while. Then in 1985, he was elected as the district attorney of Center County. He was re-elected 4 times, but in 2005, he said that he would not run again for re-election. Not everything in Ray's personal life went to plan. He divorced Barbara in 1991. In 1996, he would get married again, but that marriage lasted only 5 years until 2001. The year after that, he moved in with his girlfriend, Patti Krieger. Back in May of 1996, Ray's older brother disappeared from his home in Westchester, Ohio. He was found a week later in the Great Miami River. Police ruled that he took his own life. In 2005, Ray himself would disappear. At 11:30 on April 15, he called for Nicola. This was the last time anyone has heard from him. When Ray didn't arrive home, for Nicola called police to report him missing. The next day, investigators found Ray's red Mini Cooper. It was parked in an antique store parking lot in Lewisburg. Inside the car was his cell phone, but not his laptop, keys or wallet. There was no signs of foul play. Near his car is a river, so the initial belief was that he took his life in the same manner as his brother. They searched the river, but there was no sign of him. The police then took sniffer dogs to his car. What they found made them believe instead that Ray got into someone else's car. 2.5 months after he disappeared, fishermen found Ray's laptop. The laptop's hard drive was missing, but that too was found several days later. The police also searched Ray's house, where Nicola was still living, for any possible leads. On the home computer, they found some interesting searches, such as how to wreck a hard drive, how to fry a hard drive, and what are damages to a notebook computer. The police now believes that it is most likely that he took his own life, but they are looking into other possibilities, such as foul play. With Ray's line of work, he made a lot of enemies. It is also possible that Ray wanted to start a new life. There has actually been quite a few sightings of him. The most notable one was where a bartender and an off-duty policeman saw who they believed to be Ray while he was watching a baseball game in Wilkes Bar. There are a lot of interesting possibilities as to what could have happened to him, and many believe that he will be found. Teresa Lynn Gibson was born on the 17th of August 1960 in Knoxville, Tennessee. On the morning of October 8, 1976, she got up early to get ready for school. She had a long bus ride to prepare for, since her class had a field trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Teresa really did not want to go on this trip and expressed her concerns with her father. She was happy to see it was raining outside when she woke up and was confident that the trip would be cancelled. To her dismay, she learned that the trip was still going ahead when she arrived at Bearden High School. She was definitely not dressed for hiking. She even had a diamond and sapphire ring that cost her $600. At around 12:30 a.m., the school buses arrived at a parking lot near Forney Ridge Trail. This trail was 1.8 miles long and led to a place called Andrews Bald. When the students got to Andrews Bald, they all had to return back to the parking lot. Several students saw Teresa make it to Andrews Bald, and she was last seen about 3/4 of a mile from the parking lot. What is strange about her disappearing is that there were lots of students behind her and in front of her. Her disappearance was noted 30 minutes after she was last seen. A teacher and one student then went back through the trail, while all the other students had to wait in the bus, but they couldn't find Teresa. The teacher, Wayne Gunlip, then called the National Park Service and filed a report. He also stayed behind while everyone else headed back to Knoxville, Tennessee. That evening, 19 volunteers gathered to search for Teresa. By then, the weather was very bad. The initial search was greatly hampered by the rain and fog. School officials had to inform Mr. and Mrs. Gibson about Teresa's disappearance. The Gibsons then went to the Smoky Mountains themselves to help search. Despite searching and a lot of media coverage, no one was able to find Teresa. 5 years after she disappeared, her father was interviewed and he expressed his gratitude towards everyone that has helped in trying to find her. He also said that he was disappointed in the school that it did not have better policies in place to protect the students. It is now over 4 decades since she disappeared and no one has seen her. Some of her classmates believe that she ran away, but it can't be proven. There's also no sign of any foul play. 18-year-old Mona Blade lived in Hamilton, New Zealand in 1975. She worked as a shop assistant. Mona lived with her sister Lillian, Lillian's husband Tom, and her niece Angela. In New Zealand, Queen Elizabeth II is quite a big deal, and they celebrate her birthday each year. Mona wanted to visit her parents, who lived in Hastings, for the celebration, and she decided to hitchhike. Early morning on the 31st of May 1975, she started hitchhiking. Mona was seen by a truck driver as she got into an orange Datsun, similar to this one, in an area called Taupo. The truck driver would later see the car again on an isolated road, but didn't see Mona still in the car. The driver of the car was described as middle-aged, bald, fat, and possibly wearing glasses. Her parents didn't know she was coming, since it was a surprise visit. That meant her family was only informed that she was missing 3 days after she was last seen. She was supposed to start a new job, and when she didn't come in, her family was alerted and they called the police. A massive search for her was launched. Not a lot of people go missing in New Zealand, so this was massive news. Mona was described as 5 feet 6 inches, with a fair complexion, honey brown hair and blue eyes. Hundreds of leads came in immediately, placing her in many different places. The lead that was mainly followed up at first was that of the truck driver that saw her climb into the Datsun. The area around where the car was seen on the isolated road was searched by dogs, the police, volunteers and helicopters. A $10,000 reward was issued for any information. The police even checked every similar Datsun in New Zealand. By December, there was no sign of Mona or the man she was last seen with, so the investigation was scaled down. Something that hampered the initial investigation was the pictures the family supplied of Mona. In the pictures, she was younger with longer hair. When she disappeared, she had much shorter hair. Each time the police spoke to the truck driver, he would change some details of his story. This caused the police to believe he was being influenced by what he heard and read about the case. This meant that the initial investigation looking for suspects in a Datsun might have been a complete waste of time. A year after she disappeared, Mona's father, Peter Blades, spoke about a hard time his family is going through. They received lots of letters saying bad things about them and Mona. There was even a woman who claimed Mona was taken by wicked scientists who wanted her brain cells. There were a couple of confirmed suspects, such as a man that rented a Datsun, like the one she was seen in, possibly by the trucker if he was being truthful. The man rented a Datsun on the day she disappeared, and 2 weeks later he ended his own life and the life of a student. It also became known to the police that Mona had connections with gangs, and maybe a gang member could be involved with her disappearance. In 2004, the police believe they finally solved her disappearance. They came across a shallow grave that had a piece of concrete with the name Mona Blades on it. It turned out the previous owner of the property inscribed the name on the concrete and dug the grave as a joke in 1998. In 2005, Mona's brother Tony Blades told the Daily Post his family had not talked to the media during the previous 30 years about their feelings because it was too hard on them, especially their mother, who was then in her 80s, and her father had passed away not knowing his daughter's whereabouts. In 2018, her case was featured on a show called Cold Case. The detectives they used re-examined the original files, hoping to find new leads. They determined that the initial investigation was too heavily focused on the man and the Datsun. They also said that if the family provided pictures instead where Mona had short hair, it might have made a difference. The most notable thing they concluded was there were gang members that traveled on that road as they went to a gathering in Wellington the weekend she went missing. It is now a little over 45 years after she disappeared, and her whereabouts are still unknown. The positive thing, however, is that the police are still looking, and there are still new leads coming in every now and then. Kimberly Ann Langwell was born on 24 February 1965 in Beaumont, Texas. Her nickname was Kim. In the afternoon at about 5:30 p.m. of July 9, 1999, 55-year-old Kimberly called her teenage daughter. Kimberly reminded her about dinner plans she made for that evening and that she would be home soon after visiting a friend. Kimberly didn't arrive home and her boyfriend started searching for her when he got worried. He found her car abandoned in the parking lot of a shopping center on Dowland Road. This is what her car looks like. Kimberly's wallet and her car keys were missing. Her cell phone and other personal items were still inside the car. There was no sign of her, so the boyfriend called the police. An extensive search of the area was done, but it did not produce any clues as to her whereabouts. Her family members believe she might have went to the pharmacy of the shopping center, but don't know what happened after she left. They also said it is strange for her not to make contact with her daughter since they are so close. It was interesting that her family also said they believed the boyfriend was responsible for her disappearance. She even told her family had either heard that she took her own life, not to believe it. Kimberly also told her sister never to stop looking for her remains if something happened to her. She is described as a Caucasian female, blonde hair, blue eyes. She has a scar under her chin. She has a reddish-purple birthmark on her middle to lower portion of her back, and her ears are pierced. Sabrina Paige Aisenburg was born on the 27th of June 1997 in Valrico, Florida. When Sabrina was 5 months old, on November 24, her mother Marlene Aisenburg woke up at 6 a.m. and went to her kitchen. She found it rather surprising that the laundry room door was open. When Marlene went into the laundry room, she saw that the garage door was also open. She then went to check on Sabrina. Marlene discovered that Sabrina was missing from a crib. The news of this shocked the community, and the police knew they had to find the kidnapper quickly. The police learned that the Aisenburgs left the garage door open overnight. An unidentified shoe print and a blonde hair was found in Sabrina's room. Despite this, the police focused all their attention on Sabrina's parents. Marlene and Steve Aisenburg denied any involvement, however. They claimed that they believed someone who couldn't have a baby of their own snuck into the house and took Sabrina. They also made a public appeal for whoever it was to come forward and bring Sabrina home safely. The police didn't buy it and took several items from the home for analysis. A video was taken of the Aisenburgs smiling brightly as they left the home just a day after Sabrina went missing. What also didn't help their case was when the police found a video that was taken by her parents just a few days before she disappeared. It showed Sabrina with a lot of bruises on her face and a patch of hair missing on her head. The Aisenburgs then hired a lawyer and said they will take the polygraph test. After the test, Marlene claimed it came back inconclusive. The police later said it did not come back inconclusive, but they did not want to say whether she passed or failed. In November 1999, Steve and Marlene were arrested, but they had to be let go when a judge dropped all the charges against them. In April 2003, the police began to believe that an unidentified young girl, known as Paloma Unknown, could be Sabrina. DNA testing was done, but it was confirmed that this little girl is not Sabrina, unfortunately. In 2017, a 20-year-old woman contacted the Aisenburgs using Facebook. She believed that she might be Sabrina. She claims that there are no records or photos to document the first 5 months of her life. Soon after that, another woman came forward believing she could be Sabrina. Both women sent in their DNA to be tested. For some reason, it has still not been made public what the results are of these tests. People have pointed out that if one of these women was Sabrina, the media would have been all over this case by now. Michael Wayne Dunne was born on the 12th day of March in 1986 in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. On the 24th of March 1991, 4-year-old Michael and his family went to Blanchard High School for his mom, Crystal's, flag football practice. Michael was wearing a blue hooded jacket, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt, rugby pants, and blue sneakers that day. At around 12:30 p.m, a family arrived at the school. Once there, Michael asked his mom if he could go to the playground. The playground was near the football field where the practice was going to take place. Crystal had a bad feeling and felt that something wasn't quite right, yet she allowed him to go to the playground. She told him to stay there until his dad came. A little while later, Michael's father, Bruce, went to the playground, but there was no sign of Michael. Immediately, panic started to set in. The police was called and 50 people started searching for Michael. The investigation into Michael's disappearance became one of the largest investigations in Canadian history. The police classified his case as an abduction and not a missing persons case, since he disappeared so quickly from a public place. All of the detectives from the Victoria Police Department were called in to solve this case. The police received hundreds of tips from around the country every single day that they had to follow up on. A witness told police that she saw a man in his 40s or 50s with a brown van near the playground. A month after Michael disappeared, the police staged a recreation of Michael's disappearance at Blanchard Elementary using a brown van. The hope was that this would jog someone's memory. Unfortunately, the police were unable to produce new leads. Despite all of the effort being put in to find young Michael, no one had any clue where he was. The case went cold. It would remain that way for 15 years. Then, in 2006, the police heard about a young man that physically resembled Michael, who had been living in British Columbia since 1991. DNA tests were done, but it was confirmed that this man was not Michael. In 2009, police in Milwaukee, Wisconsin found a missing person poster of Michael at the home of 62-year-old Vernon Seitz. Despite Wisconsin being in the US, it is really close to Canada, where Michael disappeared. Vernon Seitz have confessed to taking children's lives before. The police couldn't question him because he passed away apparently from natural causes. In 2011, just before the 20th anniversary of Michael's disappearance, the police were notified of a man living in Chase, British Columbia, who looked like Michael. Unfortunately, after DNA testing was done, it was confirmed that this man is also not Michael. His case remains open, with the police still committed to continuing the investigation. Both the police and Michael's family remain hopeful and believe that one day a tip will come in and will provide them with an answer about his whereabouts. We are now close to him being missing for 30 years, and to this day tips continue to come in from the public, especially around the anniversary of his disappearance each year. Martin Duncan Allen was born on the 19th day of October 1964 in Islington, London, England. Martin's mom worked as a secretary at Tufnell Park Primary School. When Martin was 12 years old, his father got a job as a chauffeur for the Australian High Commissioner. This meant the family moved to a cottage in Kensington, London. This also meant that their neighbours included Margaret Thatcher and the De Beers family. Martin attended the Central Foundation Grammar School in Old Street. He was described as intelligent, good at French, maths and drawing. He was also quite shy. On the 5th of November 1979, after school was done for the day, Martin walked home with his friends. At 3:50 p.m, he said goodbye to some school friends at King's Cross Station and continued on his way home. At 5 p.m, he was seen at his home by his brother Kevin. He just quickly got some money and left again. His plan was to go to his brother Bob's house. That evening, when it got late, his family did not get worried. Always when it got late, Martin would just stay at his brother's house. The next day, the family still hadn't heard anything from Martin. At 7 p.m, Miss Allen rang Bob. Bob told her had Martin never made it to his house. The family then called Robert, who was Martin's best friend. He told them that he wasn't at school that day. The parents then called the police. A large-scale police operation was launched to help find Martin. The police searched his room for 9 hours, looking for any leads but found none. 5 weeks after his disappearance, a TV appeal was made. A male witness then came forward. He says that on the day Martin disappeared, he saw a man accompanying a boy acting suspiciously at Gloucester Station. The man was standing with his arm around a boy that looked like Martin. The boy appeared to be distressed, and the man seemed very nervous. When the two of them went into the train, the witness apparently heard the man say to the boy that he should not run away. The witness described the man as 6 feet tall, in his 30s, well built, with very blonde hair and a mustache. He was wearing a denim jacket and trousers. What ensued was London's biggest house-to-house search. The police searched every house in the area. Investigators eliminated 200 suspects. They spoke to 50,000 people and collected 600 statements during the inquiry. Unfortunately, the identity of this man is still not known. Martin's brother Jeffrey alleged that in the early stages of the police investigation, the detective responsible for the original 1979 investigation had told the Allen family that there were high-up people involved and that they should stop talking and not take it further because someone will get hurt. In 1984, a book was written about the case by writer Anton Hill. In 1998, the police in Liverpool received an anonymous tip-off. This led them to the house of a 62-year-old child predator. In his house, they found a shrine dedicated to Martin, newspaper cuttings, pictures, and a headstone engraved in memory of Martin Allen. This bizarre development led to renewed interest in the case, but unfortunately the police could not find anything else linking the man to the disappearance of Martin. In 2009, the police told the family that the files on the investigation were destroyed in a flood. Also in 2009, Martin's parents conceded that they have no hope of seeing him alive again. They believe him to be abducted. They stated that their only hope is to know what happened and why it happened. Sadly, they will never know since both of them passed away.
Susan Walsh was born on the 18th of February 1960. From a young age, she aspired to be a poet. She attended William Paterson University. There she studied English and writing. Susan was also employed as a journalist for the university newspaper. Susan was struggling to pay her tuition, so for some time she worked as an exotic dancer and stripper. She also had struggles with substance abuse and alcoholism. Nevertheless, she graduated in 1998 with a bachelor's degree. After graduating, she worked as a writer for engineering and business publications. Susan married Mark Walsh, who is the brother of musician Joe Walsh. The next year in 1985, the couple had one son named David. On July 16, 1996, Susan left her apartment complex in Nutley, New Jersey. She shared the apartment with her son. By then, she and Mark had problems and weren't married anymore. He lived in the apartment below them. Susan went out to run some errands and make a telephone call at a payphone across the street. She left her son in the care of his father. Susan has never been seen after that, and no sign of her has ever been found. At the time of her disappearance, her friends worried that she had relapsed after having maintained 11 years of sobriety. The police immediately eliminated Mark Walsh as a suspect in her disappearance. Rumors soon circulated that Susan's disappearance was connected to the investigative journalism she had been doing at the time. Before her disappearance, she was working on an article that would expose illegal dealings of the Russian mafia. The police could never find a connection between her disappearance and the article, though. In a 2006 article in the New York Post, it was noted that Susan had confided to a former boyfriend that another of her ex-boyfriends had been stalking her. The article also stated that her husband Mark had refused to allow police to perform forensic testing of his home. The case appeared on Unsolved Mysteries in 1997. The police are still investigating some leads to this day, but for right now, the case is still unsolved.
Harold and Michaela Degree got married on Valentine's Day in 1988. A year later, their son O'Brien was born. Then in 1990, their daughter Asha was born. The family lived in Shelby, North Carolina. The family was very much focused on their extended family, school, and their relationship with God. The parents tried their best to protect their children from outside influences, but did not even have a computer in the house. Asha was in 4th grade in the year 2000 at Falston Elementary School. Asha loved playing basketball and she was a star point guard. On February 13th at 8 p.m., O'Brien and Asha went to bed in a bedroom that they shared. Just before 9 p.m., the power in the neighborhood went out because of a nearby car accident. The power came back on during the middle of the night at 12:30 a.m. on February 14th. Harold then went to check on the children and saw them both sleeping. Just before he went to bed at 2:30 a.m., he again checked on the children and they were still asleep in their beds. After that, O'Brien heard Asha's bed squeak. He assumed she merely changed her position, so he went back to sleep. He was wrong. Asha got out of bed. She then took a book bag and filled it with clothes and personal items and left the house. Between 3:45 a.m. and 4:15 a.m., a trucker and a motorist saw her walking along Highway 18. Asha was wearing a long-sleeved white t-shirt and white pants. The motorist turned around his vehicle because he figured it was strange for a little girl to be walking around at that hour. He saw Asha run into the woods by the roadside and then disappear. It was raining and it looked like a storm was coming. Michaela awoke at 4:45 a.m. to get the children ready. She was in a good mood. It was Valentine's Day and also her wedding anniversary. When she opened the children's room at 6:30 a.m., she noticed that O'Brien was in his bed, but Asha wasn't in hers. She looked for her throughout the house and even in the family cars, but still no sign of Asha. Michaela then told Harold. He suggested that maybe Asha went across the street to his mother's house. Michaela then called but was told Asha isn't there. That is when panic set in and the police was called. At 6:40 a.m., police arrived at their house. They had police dogs, but the dogs could not pick up her scent outside. Michaela went through the neighborhood yelling Asha's name. By 7 a.m., everyone was awake and looking for Asha. Local news also arrived on the scene, and thanks to them, the trucker and the motorist came forward, telling police what they saw. The police now knew what direction Asha headed in, but still couldn't find her. At the end of the day, there was still no sign of her. The next day, candy wrappers were found in a shed at a nearby business along the highway. Along with them were a pencil, a marker, and a Mickey Mouse-shaped hairbow. It was confirmed that these items belonged to Asha. Also that day, Michaela found that Asha's favorite clothing was missing from her room. That is how they knew that Asha must have packed clothes and some personal items into her book bag. After a week, the search for Asha was called off. 9,000 man-hours was invested into searching for her. The police also followed up on every single lead. Missing person posters were put up in the entire area. The belief was that Asha ran away, especially since she packed the things herself. On the other hand, it is not typical for a 9-year-old to run away though. There was also no reason for her to run away. She did not have a dysfunctional family, and she did well in school. A month after Asha disappeared, the family went on the Montel Williams show to call attention to the case. America's Most Wanted and the Oprah Winfrey Show also devoted segments to it. Despite all the efforts, no one had any idea what happened to Asha. Michaela got really frustrated. She stated publicly that people aren't doing enough, and she believes it is because Asha is black and not white. About a year and a half on August 3rd, 2001, Asha's book bag and other items were discovered during a construction project of Highway 18 in Burke County near Morganton. It was found 26 miles of 42 kilometers from Shelby, where the family lived. All of their things were wrapped in a plastic bag. The FBI took it in for more forensic analysis. The results from these tests still haven't been made public. Asha's family still tries to keep the case in the media. In 2008, they established a scholarship in her name for a deserving local student. They also host an annual walk to raise awareness and money to fund their search. There's also pictures of what she looked like back then and what she possibly could look like now. In May 2016, the FBI announced that they have a possible new lead. They said that Asha may have been seen getting into a dark green, early 1970s Lincoln Continental. The lead seemed promising, but hasn't led anywhere just yet. The family still believes that one day Asha would walk through the door and they would be reunited. Very little is known about this next case. Also, since it happened 65 years ago, the odds of it ever getting solved is very low. Nevertheless, I decided to cover it. Weldon Kees was born in 1914. He was an American poet, painter, novelist, short story writer, and filmmaker, among many other things. Kees is considered an important mid-20th century poet. His work is still being studied in schools today. His work has been immensely influential on subsequent generations of poets writing in English. Kees was very frustrated that his work could not do as well as he hoped it would. He admitted to his friends that sometimes he felt like disappearing. On July 19, 1955, his car was found deserted on the Marin County side of the Golden Gate Bridge. It is unclear if he decided to run away to start a new life or if he decided to end his life abruptly. Shonda Renee Stansbury was 24 years old when she disappeared in Weldon, North Carolina. Stansbury was last seen at about 6 a.m. on December 9, 2006 at her sister's workplace, the Waffle House. She had a lot of bruises on her face and legs and a bump on her temple. One of the customers at the Waffle House gave her a ride to the West Side Trailer Court in Roanoke Rapids. Stansbury had been staying with friends at a trailer court prior to her disappearance, but on the day she was last seen, they asked her to leave. She has never been heard from again. Police initially believed Stansbury left willingly. At 11:30 a.m. on December 14, however, a woman in Weldon County, South Carolina, called 911 and said she had seen a woman whom she believed was Stansbury running into the woods behind the information grocery store of Highway 158 in Halifax, North Carolina. The woman hung up without identifying herself, and investigators were unable to trace the call. But a few days later, the police tracked her down and spoke to the witness. She told them 2 black males chased the woman, who was naked, bleeding from her face and screaming for help, into the woods. The witness knew Stansbury and recognized her. She said that she didn't try to help because she was afraid for her life. The witness described one of the men chasing Stansbury as between 28 and 32 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall, with a dark complexion, big arms and a stocky build. He was wearing jeans, a white t-shirt and a baseball cap and may have been bald. The other man was 5'6", with a medium build, light skin and dreadlocked hair. He may have been wearing Timberland boots, jeans with patches on them, an oversized button-down shirt, which is possibly brown or light brown. Stansbury's case was reclassified as an endangered missing person as a result of the witness's statements. In January of 2008, over a year after her disappearance, several more people came forward and reported that they saw Shonda in Wilson County, approximately 60 miles away from Roanoke Rapids. Detectives were sent to search for Shonda in Wilson County, but again failed to locate any trace of her. Stansbury has 3 children. Her mother believes she may have sustained a head injury that caused amnesia, and she may be unable to recall her identity. Her case remains unsolved. Tara Lee Calico was born in February 1969 in Belen, New Mexico. She was a highly driven person, did really well in school, would ride her bike every morning, and also play tennis. Tara and her mom, Patti Doll, would often ride together, but Patti stopped as she felt that she was being stalked by a motorist. On the 20th September 1988, Tara left her home just after 9 a.m. to go on her usual bike ride. Her mom advised her to take pepper spray with her, but Tara rejected the idea. She did tell her mom though that if she wasn't home by 12 a.m. to come and pick her up, because she had plans to go play tennis with her boyfriend after 12. The majority of her bike ride took place along New Mexico State Road 47. By 12 a.m., when Tara still wasn't home, her mom drove to look for her along the same road Tara used every day. After not finding her, Patti called the police. They also drove the entire length of the road and found no sign of Tara. When they started questioning witnesses, some said that they saw her riding on her bike, but that is all. Then, pieces of Tara's Sony Walkman and cassette tape were later discovered along the road. Tara's mom believed that she might have dropped them to mark her trail. Not long after, the police finally got a lead. Witnesses came forward claiming they saw a light-colored pickup truck, possibly a 1953 Ford, with a camper shell that followed closely behind Tara. The witnesses said that Tara was unaware of the car because she was listening to her music. This was a solid lead and something for the police to go on, but unfortunately it led nowhere, and the case grew cold. Then 9 months after Tara disappeared, on June 15, 1989, a Polaroid photo of an unidentified woman and a boy was found in a parking lot of a convenience store in Port St. Joe, Florida. The woman that found the photo said it was in the parking space where a white windowless Toyota cargo van had been parked when she arrived at the store. The woman also said that the van was driven by a man with a mustache who appeared to be in his late 20s. The police set up roadblocks to try and intercept the car, but sadly their efforts did not work out, and the car was not spotted again. The photo was spread around to try and find out who the young woman and the boy was. Family friends of Tara contacted her mom to ask her if she felt that it could be Tara. When she looked at the picture, she was convinced it was Tara. She noted that a woman in the photo had an identical scar that Tara also had. As for the boy in the picture, I will make a separate video on him where I go into more detail about him. Scotland Yard analyzed the photo and confirmed that the woman is indeed Tara. Then however, the Los Alamos National Laboratory also looked into it and disagreed. The FBI also analyzed the photo and their results were inconclusive. It is still not known today who the young woman in the photo is and if it is actually Tara. Then in 2009, 20 years after the Polaroid picture was found, 2 more pictures were discovered. This is the first one. When Tara's mom looked at this picture, she also believed it was Tara. Then this picture. Tara's mom was not sure about this one. It is widely believed that this last picture was a prank. In 2008, Valencia County Sheriff Rene Rivera announced that he received information that 2 teenagers accidentally hit Tara with a truck, panicked, and then took her life. Rivera stated that he knew the names of the boys, but he did not have enough evidence to make a case. In November 2013, a police report was filed. Another witness came forward and wanted to tell police what he saw regarding the disappearance of Tara. The man was nearing the end of his life and he wanted to come clean. He claimed that back in 1988 he was friends with 2 troublemakers. One day when they were playing in a basement, his 2 friends talked about how they ended the life of Tara. The 2 of them said that they accidentally hit Tara with a truck, but she then told them she will make sure they end up in jail. They panicked, so they took her life and hid her behind a bush. When people started searching for her, they moved her to the basement. This matched what Sheriff Renee Rivera had said a few years earlier, just with more details. Later that year, another man came forward, saying that one of the teenagers also confessed to him. Interestingly enough, one of the two teenagers was identified to be Lawrence Romero Jr., the son of another sheriff, Lawrence Romero Sr. You'd think with the confession, this case would be easy to get solved now, but sadly the case is closed and it is not being investigated. Many believe Sheriff Renee Rivera is covering for the other sheriff, Lawrence Romero, and his son, who might have been involved. Either way, Lawrence Romero Jr. passed away and can't be questioned. This case is pretty frustrating considering it can be solved if it will just be looked into. Patti and her husband passed away without knowing what happened to their daughter. She stayed in the same house for 15 years after Tara disappeared, hoping one day she would return.
Patricia Bernadette Meehan was born November 1st, 1951, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She attended college in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. There, she studied early childhood development so that she could be prepared for a career in daycare. It did not last long, however, and she decided to do something else. In 1985, she relocated to Bozeman, Montana. There, she worked on a ranch because she loved animals. Patricia also did some odd jobs so that she could support herself. On April 19, 1989, Patricia spoke to her father over the phone and told him that she was under a lot of stress and that she really wanted to come home. The next evening at 8:15 p.m., a woman by the name of Peggy Bueller and her father were traveling west on Montana Highway 200 near Circle, Montana. They witnessed a vehicle driving east on the wrong side of the road. Peggy managed to swerve, avoiding a head-on collision. The vehicle did crash into the car behind Peggy though. The car that was just crashed into was driven by an off-duty police dispatcher, Carol Hates. Carol was luckily unharmed. She watched the blonde woman emerge from the other car that crashed into her. The blonde woman then walked up to her and stared at her as though she was looking right through her. The woman did not say anything. She then climbed over the fence and stood motionless, just observing the scene. It was almost like she was a spectator, not like it had happened to her. Peggy then watched the woman walk away into an empty field before vanishing. Peggy then drove to town to reach a phone while her father stayed with Carol. The police soon arrived and the blonde woman was nowhere to be seen. Thanks to her car, she could be identified though. Within 30 minutes, she was identified as Patricia Meehan. The police tried to find her. About a mile from the crash, they found a trail of tennis shoe tracks. Investigators followed the trail until about 3 a.m., until the tracks suddenly stopped. They then decided to inform Patricia's family. Her family then immediately came to Montana to help search. The family distributed over 2,000 missing persons flyers in the area. Local volunteers also started to search using horses and ATVs. Patricia's family even employed a helicopter search. Unfortunately, this was all to no avail. The police tried to determine why Patricia was in the area in the first place. The site of the accident was about 400 miles from where she lived. Investigators believed that Patricia had to have hitchhiked out of the area after the accident. If she stayed on foot, they would have found her. Patricia's mother told police that she was struggling with depression. It was believed early on in the investigation that Patricia also suffered from amnesia because of the crash. There have been over 5,000 reported sightings of Patricia since she disappeared. I'll only mention a few that's most credible. 2 weeks after Patricia disappeared, a police officer in Lovern, Minnesota, claimed to have seen her at a Hardee's restaurant. The police officer questioned her. She refused to give her name. Initially, she claimed to be from Colorado, and then later from Israel. The next day, 2 more sightings of Patricia were reported. One was a waitress from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, who saw Patricia sit in a truck stop diner. Interestingly enough, on the same day, another waitress saw Patricia in Murdo, South Dakota. This waitress claimed that Patricia was in a company of a man who appeared to be in his 30s. Despite all of the sightings and the efforts being put in to find her by her family, the police and local volunteers, no one has any idea where Patricia Meehan is.
Kyron Richard Horman was born September 9, 2002 in Portland, Oregon, to parents Desiree and Kane. Just before Kyron was born, Desiree and Kane got divorced, however, and Kane married a woman by the name Terry Moulton. On June 4, 2010, 7-year-old Kyron was taken to school by Terry. She stayed with him while he attended a science fair. This picture right here was taken at that science fair. At 8:45 am, Terry left the school. He saw Kyron walking down the hall to his first class. However, Kyron never made it to his first class, and he was marked absent for that day. After 3 p.m, Terry, Kane, and their daughter Kiara waited at a bus stop to pick up Kyron. The bus driver then informed them that Kyron never boarded the bus. The school was then called, and the family then learned that as far as the school is concerned, Kyron was not at school after the science fair. Realizing this, the police was called. What ensued was the largest search in Oregon history. During the search, some very interesting information came out. It turned out that Terry possibly offered to pay the landscaper a lot of money to take out Kane. It is not 100% known if this happened, however, especially since the DA told the landscaper he will be deported if he does not testify against Terry. Either way, Kane divorced her and got a restraining order against her. Terry also failed 2 polygraph tests when she was asked about Kyron's disappearance. In May 2020, a book titled Boy Missing: The Search for Kyron Horman was released. In the book it claims that Kyron's bus driver, along with a classmate and 2 of the classmates' family members, saw Terry walk with Kyron through the parking lot after the science fair. It was also announced that police are looking for an unknown man that was seen in Terry's truck on the day Kyron disappeared. As you can imagine, Terry is the main suspect, but there's not enough evidence yet. She still claims that she had nothing to do with his disappearance, and even went on Dr. Phil in 2016 to proclaim her innocence. To this day, it is not known what happened to little Kyron, but hopefully we'll find out soon.